My name's Jack Connelly. I've been behind the wheel for decades, driving America's highways when the world is asleep. Out here in the dead of night, the road isn't just asphalt and paint. It's alive. It whispers. It remembers. And sometimes, it shows you things you'll never forget. Over the years, I've carried more than just freight. I've carried memories, moments burned into my mind that still ride with me to this day. Some call them ghost stories. I call them the truth. Tonight, I'm going to tell you 6 of them. Story 1. The Vanishing Hitchhiker Route 66, Oklahoma. It was sometime in the late fall, a cold and rainy night on Route 66 in Oklahoma. The kind of night where your headlights barely cut through the sheets of water and the wipers can't keep up. My rig hummed along steady, but the road felt endless. The thunder rolled across the sky, and every now and then, lightning would crack wide enough to light up the empty fields on either side. Now, I've been driving long enough to know when to keep moving and when to take shelter. But on nights like this, sometimes you just keep the wheels turning, hoping you'll run out of the storm. That's when I saw her. She was standing on the shoulder of the road, soaked through, her hair plastered to her face. She had one of those old-style dresses, pale blue, the kind that didn't belong in this time. At first, I thought maybe I was just seeing a trick of the rain and the lightning, but then she lifted her arm. Thumb out like any hitchhiker you'd ever seen. Now, any trucker will tell you, you don't always stop for strangers at night. Too many stories, too many risks. But there was something about this girl. She looked so lost, so cold, that I found myself slowing down before I even realized what I was doing. I leaned over, opened the passenger door, and said, "You need a ride?" She didn't say a word at first, just climbed in, dripping wet, and sat real quiet, staring out the windshield like she'd been waiting for me all along. We drove for a while without speaking, just the sound of the rain hammering on the cab and the wipers squeaking back and forth. Every now and then, I'd steal a glance at her. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, and this faraway look, like she wasn't really there with me. Finally, I cleared my throat and asked, "Where are you headed?" She turned slowly, her voice soft, almost like an echo. "Home. Just past town. 1457 Willow Creek Road." I nodded. "All right then. Not too far." She gave the faintest smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The kind of smile that makes you feel colder instead of warmer. As I drove, I tried making small talk, asked if she'd been out in the storm long, if she had family waiting. She barely answered. Just short little words. Yes. No. Not long. And then silence again. The strangest part? The cab was warm. Heater running full blast, but she still shivered, like the cold had sunk too deep into her bones. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, my eyes on the road, but something about her made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I've hauled freight through blizzards, hurricanes, even tornado warnings, and I don't scare easy. But that girl sitting beside me, she carried a weight heavier than any load my rig ever pulled. Finally, we reached the address she'd given me. A little white farmhouse, porch, light glowing faint through the rain. I pulled over, put the truck in neutral, and turned to tell her, "Here we are." But the seat was empty. My heart jumped clean into my throat. I hadn't heard the door open, hadn't felt the cab shift like someone climbed out. She was just gone. For a long second, I sat frozen, rain drumming hard on the windshield. Finally, I killed the engine, climbed down, and walked up the gravel path to the house. My boots crunched loud against the stones, each step heavier than the last. I knocked on the door, feeling like a fool, wondering what in the hell I was going to say. After a moment, an old woman answered. Her face was lined with years, but her eyes were sharp. She looked me up and down, then asked, "Can I help you?" I swallowed hard. "Ma'am, I just picked up a young woman on the highway. She told me this was her address. She was wearing a blue dress, long dark hair, said she lived here." The woman's expression changed, and her hand went to her mouth. For a moment she didn't speak. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Sir, that was my daughter. She died 20 years ago. Right there on Route 66. Car accident in the rain. She's been gone a long, long time." My chest felt tight. My breath caught. The night seemed to close in around me. The woman must have seen the shock on my face because she nodded slowly, as if to reassure me. "You're not the first. Every now and then, someone knocks on my door. A driver, a traveler, saying they gave her a ride home. I don't know why she keeps coming back. Maybe she just doesn't know she's gone." I stood there, rain dripping from the brim of my hat, not knowing what to say. Finally, I just muttered, "I'm sorry for your loss," and walked back to my rig. As I pulled away, I glanced once more at the house in the rearview mirror. For the briefest moment, I swore I saw her standing on the porch, that same pale blue dress, watching me drive off into the storm. Even now, years later, whenever I pass through Oklahoma and the rain starts to fall, I can't help but look to the side of the road, half of me hoping I'll see her again, half of me praying I won't. That night on Route 66 taught me something. Some passengers don't belong to this world anymore, but that wasn't the only time the road showed me something I couldn't explain. A few years later, I was driving through Florida on I-95, and what I saw out there still sends chills down my spine. Let me tell you what happened. Story 2, The Shadow on the Overpass. I-95, Florida. It was a humid summer night in Florida, the kind where the air feels heavy enough to choke you. I was hauling freight down I-95, the highway stretching straight and empty under the glow of my headlights. Midnight had already slipped past, and the only company I had was the low hum of my engine and the occasional buzz of static on the CB. Now, truckers know that I-95 is no stranger to strange things. Accidents, roadside memorials, wrecked cars that never should have survived. But what I saw that night, it wasn't in any manual, and no safety course could have prepared me. Up ahead, the road lifted over a concrete overpass. At first it looked ordinary, just another bridge cutting across the highway. But as I got closer, my lights picked up a figure standing at the edge. It was a man. He stood right on the railing, his arms at his sides, head bowed. For a second, I thought maybe he was some lost soul, drunk or just out of his mind. But the closer I got, the more the hairs on my arms prickled, because he wasn't moving, not even in the warm, damp breeze. And then, just as I passed underneath, he jumped. I slammed the brakes, my heart hammering. The world seemed to slow down in that split second. I could swear I saw his body drop right in front of my windshield, arms flailing, eyes wide. The impact should have shattered glass, should have sent my rig swerving across the lanes. But there was nothing. No thud, no crunch of bone. Just the hollow echo of my own gasp and the hiss of the brakes as I pulled to the shoulder. I sat there, frozen, staring into the dark stretch of road ahead. My hands were slick with sweat on the wheel, my chest tight. Slowly, I forced myself out of the cab. boots hitting the asphalt. The night was silent, except for the hum of insects and the faint hiss of the highway lights. I walked back toward the spot where I thought the body should be. Every step felt heavier than the last. But there was no one there. No body. No blood, not even a scuff mark on the road. Just the whisper of the breeze through the overpass and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. That's when my CB crackled to life. A voice scratchy but clear. "You saw him too, didn't you?" I froze, staring back at my cab. Slowly, I walked toward the truck, climbed inside, and grabbed the mic. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. The reply came after a long pause. "Don't worry, driver. You're not losing your mind. That man's been jumping off that overpass for 40 years. My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" The voice chuckled low, bitter. "Back in the 70s, a fella threw himself off that very bridge. Some say it was over debt. Others say it was a broken heart. Doesn't matter. What matters is, ever since then, truckers keep seeing him, standing up there, waiting. And when you get close enough, he jumps. Always jumps." I swallowed hard, staring at the overpass through my windshield. Empty now, like nothing had ever been there. The CB went quiet again, just static hissing through the speaker. I tried calling back, but no one answered. Eventually, I started my rig and eased back onto the road, though my hands still shook on the wheel. As I passed under that bridge one last time, I couldn't help but glance up. The railing was empty, bathed in the orange glow of the streetlight. But in my gut, I swear I could still feel eyes on me, watching, waiting for the next trucker to come along. Even now, whenever I drive through Florida, I grip the wheel a little tighter near the overpasses. Because out here, the dead don't always stay buried. Sometimes they wait, and sometimes they jump. People think highways are just concrete and paint, but I know better. I've seen things that don't make sense, like that stormy night in Oklahoma when I stopped at an old rest area and realized I wasn't alone. And then came Nevada, Highway 50, the loneliest road in America. Story 3, The Phantom Convoy, Highway 50, Nevada. They call Highway 50 in Nevada the loneliest road in America. And let me tell you, they're not kidding. Miles and miles of nothing but desert, dry scrub, and a sky so wide it swallows you whole. No houses, no lights, not even a gas station for hours. It was one of those nights, somewhere past midnight. My rig was the only thing moving on that stretch. Headlights cutting through the emptiness, engine humming steady like a heartbeat in the silence. I had the CB radio on, but it was dead quiet. No chatter, no voices, just static now and then, like whispers in the dark. That's when I saw them, up ahead, faint but clear, 3 rigs moving side by side. Old trucks, maybe from the 1950s, their rounded cabs shining under the moonlight, chrome grills catching the faint glow. Their tail lights glowed red like coals in the night, steady and slow. At first, I thought maybe I was just catching up to a convoy. Happens sometimes on long stretches. But the longer I stared, the stranger it felt. Those trucks, they didn't make a sound. No engine rumble, no diesel roar. Just silence. I slowed down, keeping a safe distance, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The rigs kept a perfect formation, never drifting, never changing lanes. Their trailers looked old, rusted, with faded logos I couldn't read. Curiosity got the better of me. I reached for the CB, keyed the mic and said, "Breaker 19, this is Connelly on Highway 50. Any of you boys up ahead want to say hello?" Static then. For a brief second, the static shifted. I swear I heard faint music coming through. Not trucker talk, not chatter. Music. An old country song. The kind my daddy used to play on vinyl records. My skin prickled. I leaned closer, trying to catch the words. But before I could, the CB went dead quiet again. I sped up, closing the distance. The rigs were right there, their taillights glowing steady. But when I blinked, they weren't. Gone. Just empty highways stretching out for miles, my headlights reflecting off the desert road. I slammed the brakes, my rig hissing as it slowed to a crawl. Heart pounding, I leaned forward against the wheel, trying to spot any sign of them. Dust, tire tracks, anything. But there was nothing. It was like they'd never been there at all. By the time I rolled into the next town, I was rattled, needed coffee, needed people around me, needed to know I wasn't losing my damn mind. I pulled into this little roadside diner, the kind that hasn't changed since the 60s. Neon sign buzzing, bell jingling as I pushed through the door. Inside, a waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile poured me a cup of coffee. "Long night?" she asked. "You could say that," I muttered, wrapping my hands around the mug. Then, after a pause, I added, "You ever heard of old trucks running this stretch? Like real old rigs from the 50s. Her hand froze halfway to the coffee pot. Slowly, she set it down, leaned on the counter, and gave me a look that sent chills straight through me. "You saw them, didn't you?" she asked quietly. I blinked. "Saw who?" She lowered her voice. "The convoy. 3 old rigs. Been running this road for decades." I just stared at her. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. "What are you saying?" She sighed, her eyes drifting toward the window, out at the empty desert beyond. "Back in 1957, 3 truckers were hauling cargo through here. Nobody knows exactly what happened. Storm, bad road. Maybe they just fell asleep at the wheel. But they never made it to the next town. Folks searched for days, weeks. Never found the trucks, never found the drivers. Just gone. And ever since then, sometimes on the loneliest nights, people see them rolling together. Silent. Like they're still trying to finish their run." My hand tightened around the coffee mug. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to laugh it off. Call it a ghost story meant to scare travelers. But the other part, the part still remembering those red taillights glowing steady in the dark, knew better. I left that diner a little after 3 a.m., climbed back into my rig, and sat there a long time before turning the key. Out on Highway 50, the desert stretched wide and empty. But as I rolled back into the night, I kept glancing in my mirrors, half expecting to see 3 rigs riding along with me, silent and steady, lost in time. And maybe one night, I will. Oklahoma was bad enough, Nevada was worse, but nothing prepared me for what happened in Texas. Out there, the roads stretch for miles under a hard sky, and rest stops are little islands of light in the darkness. One night I pulled into one of those stops and found something I wish I hadn't. Story 4. The Rest Stop Stranger. I-10, Texas. If you've ever driven I-10 through Texas, you know just how long and lonesome those miles can get. It's desert for hours, flat land stretching to the horizon, nothing but the moon, and your own headlights for company. That night, I'd been pushing hard, hauling freight westbound. My eyes were burning, my back sore from the seat. Around 2 in the morning, I spotted one of those small, lonely rest stops by the side of the road. Just a parking lot, a couple of vending machines, and a restroom building. Normally, I avoid those places at night. Too empty, too quiet, but my eyelids were heavy, and nature wasn't exactly asking permission. So I pulled in. The place was deserted. No cars, no trucks. Nothing but my rig hissing as it cooled down. I stepped out, stretched, and made my way to the restroom. The fluorescent light above the doorway flickered, buzzing like a trapped wasp. Inside, the place smelled damp and stale. My boots echoed off the tile as I pushed open a stall. That's when I heard it. A voice. Soft, strained, almost a whisper. "Help! Please! Somebody help me!" I froze mid-step. The sound was coming from the far-end stall. The door was shut tight, a sliver of shadow visible underneath. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing too loud in the empty restroom. "You okay in there?" No answer. Just that same weak plea. "Help me." My gut tightened. Part of me wanted to push that door open right then. But something, instinct maybe, it kept me rooted. Truckers develop a sixth sense out here, and mine was screaming that something wasn't right. I took a cautious step closer. "You hurt? You need me to call somebody?" For a long moment there was silence. Then, in the exact same tone, the same whisper. "Help me." It didn't sound real. More like a recording stuck on repeat. The air felt colder all of a sudden. The hairs on my arms standing straight. My mouth went dry. I backed away slow, my boots scuffing the tile. I left that restroom in a hurry, heart hammering, climbed into my rig, locked the doors, and sat there with the engine idling, staring at the building. The light above the doorway buzzed and flickered, casting long, jerking shadows. Finally, I grabbed the CB and called it in. Told Highway Patrol there might be somebody hurt at that rest stop. It was about 20 minutes before a patrol car rolled in. Red and blue lights flashing against the empty lot. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting easy on their belts. "You the one who called?" one asked. "Yeah," I said, climbing down from the cab. "There's somebody in the restroom." Sounded like they were asking for help. Stall was locked. They exchanged a look but didn't say anything. One of them pulled a flashlight and they headed inside. I stayed near my rig, arms crossed tight, my eyes locked on that flickering light above the door. Couple minutes later, they came back out. Their faces were pale, but neither said a word. "Well?" I asked. The older officer shook his head. "Nobody in there." "Every stall's empty." I frowned. "No, that's impossible." I heard them, clear as day, over and over. "Help me." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "Driver, you don't know, do you? That restroom's been closed for years. Folks been hearing that same voice since before I joined the force." My stomach dropped. "You mean—" "Back in the 80s, he cut in, voice low. "There was a drifter attacked in there. He crawled into the stall, locked the door, and bled out calling for help. By the time anyone found him, it was too late. And ever since then, sometimes people hear him, asking, begging. But there's no one there." I didn't know what to say. My hands shook a little as I climbed back into my rig. The officers lingered for a moment, then pulled away, leaving me alone again in the desert silence. I drove hard the rest of that night, didn't stop till the sun was high and warm on the horizon. And even now, years later, whenever I pass a lonely rest stop on I-10, I roll right on by, because I know what's waiting in there, and I don't plan on hearing that voice again. The desert has its ghosts, but the mountains and highways have voices of their own. After Texas, I started keeping my radio on low at night, thinking it would make me feel less alone. But one night in Arizona, that radio answered back, and it wasn't another trucker calling. Story 5. The Girl on the CB Radio I-40, Arizona. It was late one summer night on I-40, cutting through the Arizona desert. The road was empty. No headlights behind me, no taillights ahead, just my rig humming steady and the desert stretching endless in both directions. I had the CB radio on, more for company than anything else. Sometimes you'll catch other truckers chatting, swapping stories, keeping each other awake. But that night, static, just static. Then, clear as day, a little girl's voice came through. "Hello, can anybody hear me?" I froze, hand hovering over the mic. It wasn't crackly, not broken up. It was sharp, direct, like she was sitting right there in the cab with me. I pressed the button. "This is driver 92, who's calling?" There was silence for a long moment. Then the same voice, softer now. "I'm lost." The hairs on my arms stood up. I scanned the mirrors, the dark highway, the desert beyond. There wasn't a soul in sight. I tried to keep my voice calm. "All right, sweetheart, where are you? Can you see any signs, any landmarks?" Her reply crackled through the speaker. "It's dark. I don't know where I am. Please, can you help me?" My throat tightened. Out here in the desert, if a kid was lost, it could mean life or death. I gripped the wheel, eyes darting left and right, searching for a stranded car. Maybe a pair of headlights off the shoulder. But there was nothing. Just endless sand and cactus in the pale moonlight. I called again. "Stay calm. Tell me your name. Where are your parents?" A pause. Then in the faintest whisper, "They can't hear me. Nobody can. Only you." My stomach dropped. The voice didn't sound scared anymore. It sounded resigned. The CB hissed with static, then cleared again. "Exit 192, please. Come find me." I looked ahead. Exit 192 was still a few miles up the road. I gritted my teeth, heart pounding, and pressed down harder on the accelerator. I took the exit. It led onto a narrow service road, cracked and barely lit. My headlights swept across scrub brush, old wooden posts, and in the distance, the outline of a long abandoned gas station. The place looked dead, windows shattered, roof sagging, not a car in sight. Still I slowed to a stop, my rig idling heavy in the quiet. The desert was so still I could hear my own heartbeat. The CB crackled again. "You came." I swallowed hard. My hand shook as I picked up the mic. "Where are you?" A child's giggle, soft, eerie, echoing like it wasn't coming from the radio at all, but from the air around me. My chest went cold. I didn't wait. I shoved the truck into gear and turned that rig around so fast the tires spat gravel. The CB hissed with static. Then the voice returned one last time. "Don't leave. I'll be here, waiting." I drove for hours that night without stopping, not until I hit the bright lights of Flagstaff. Later I asked an old-timer about exit 192. His face went pale. He told me 20 years ago, a family broke down near that abandoned station. By the time help arrived, only the parents were found. Their little girl had wandered off into the desert. They never found her body, and truckers every now and then still hear her voice on the CB. Since that night, I don't leave my radio on past midnight, because out there, sometimes the voices that answer aren't the living. By then, I thought I'd seen it all, but Florida proved me wrong. On one of those endless highways, I realized another truck was following me. But this was no ordinary chase. And then, one night in Flagstaff, something happened that reminded me that sometimes it's not the dead you meet out here. It's the living, standing right on the edge. Story 6, The Man at the Tree Line. I-40, Flagstaff, Arizona. It was late, and I was driving along Interstate 40, the stretch that runs through Flagstaff, Arizona. I had just passed a small town, and now the darkness around me was so thick it felt like the road itself had disappeared. No streetlights, no cars, just me and my 18-wheeler rolling through the night. If you're a driver, you know there are times you've just got to pull over. Maybe you need a bathroom break, or maybe you just want to smoke. That night, I needed both. The problem was, I'd missed the last rest stop in all that darkness. I thought to myself, no big deal. The highway's empty. I'll just pull over on the shoulder. I eased my truck onto the shoulder, stepped out into the cool air, and for a moment I stood still, listening. Nothing. No animals, no wind, just a heavy, crushing silence. I did what I had to do, lit a cigarette, and leaned against the side of my truck. That's when I saw it. At first, just movement, a shape coming out of the tree line. My heart stopped. Miles from civilization, weak phone signal, no one else on the road, and here was a man walking out of the woods toward me. I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. Could have been a deer, a shadow, anything. But when he stepped into the open, I knew he was human. A chill ran through me, a feeling of danger. I didn't run or yell. I just slowly moved back to my driver's side door, climbed in, and locked it. The engine was still idling. I shifted into drive and kept my foot on the brake, ready to pull away if I had to. But I didn't drive off. I just sat there, cigarette trembling in my hand, watching as this man walked slowly up to my truck. He came straight to the passenger side and knocked on the window. I rolled it down just a crack and asked, "What's going on?" His face was pale, his eyes heavy. In a low, serious voice, he said, "I need you to call the police." 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Someone walks out of the woods in the middle of the night and asks you to call the cops. Could be anything. But his voice, his eyes, there was real pain there. It didn't feel like a lie. I asked carefully, "Why do you need the police?" He took a deep breath, his voice breaking. "I came out here to end my life. But at the last moment, I thought about my daughters. And I couldn't do it. Please, call the police." I didn't know what to say. The cigarette burned between my fingers as I stared at him. There was something in his eyes. Real, raw pain. The kind you only see in someone who's crossed the edge and somehow come back. I grabbed my phone and called the police, explaining the situation. While I talked, he stood outside my truck, silently crying. That's when I noticed a glint in his hand, a kitchen knife. It was the knife he'd brought to end his life. I stayed inside the cab, locks secured, and spoke calmly. "Listen, maybe you should put the knife down before the police arrive. Just set it on the ground." He nodded slowly, placed the knife on the asphalt, and stepped back. We stood there in silence, me inside the cab, him outside. No words, no movement, just that heavy thinking silence. Then, far off, I saw flashing lights. The cops arrived, talked to him, and led him away. Before they left, I called out to him. I didn't know what to say, but I felt like I had to say something. I told him, "You matter. Your daughters need you. Life is hard. but you've got to fight. I hope things get better for you." His eyes filled with tears. He just nodded as the police took him away. That was the last time I ever saw him. Even now, years later, I think about that night. I wonder how he's doing. Did he stand back up for his kids? Did life give him another chance? I hope so. And every time I'm driving alone on the empty highways at night, I glance toward the tree line. Sometimes I half expect to see a figure step out again, and deep down, I pray that if I ever do, it's him, alive, smiling, and walking back toward life. I've been driving these roads for decades. Freight comes and goes, routes change, weather shifts. But the road remembers. Sometimes it's a vanishing passenger. Sometimes it's a voice on the radio. Sometimes it's a man standing in the darkness who still has a chance to step back into life. I don't tell these stories to scare you. I tell them because they're part of the road, part of me. Every mile marker holds a memory, and every empty stretch of asphalt might be hiding something you'll never forget. So next time you're out there, driving alone at night, pay attention. Keep your eyes open, because you never know who or what might be waiting. If you made it this far, you're the kind of person who loves a good story from the road. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who drives at night. Because trust me, I've got more stories coming. Stories darker, stranger, and closer than you think. This was just the beginning. Stay tuned, the road isn't done talking yet.